Welcome to the IT Career Energizer podcast. For anyone who wants to build and grow a career in IT, develop and improve your strengths and skills, be inspired and motivated by the successes of others, manage your career progression, and achieve your IT career goals. And now, your host, Phil Burgess.
Welcome to episode 305 of the IT Career Energizer podcast. My guest on today's show is the head of UK admissions and placement at Boolean, a tech education company that teaches their students to be software engineers and then helps them to land their first job in tech. So it's my pleasure to welcome to the podcast, Patrick Lynott.
Thanks, Phil. Great to be here.
Patrick, it might actually be a good starting point for you to give us a bit of an overview of what Boolean actually is as a company and what you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head in your introduction there. So we are an online tech academy and we're actually international. So quick history, we started in Italy 3 years ago and are kind of the market leader out there with some really impressive numbers. We've trained over 1,000 students, 1,300 I think it is now. We've partnered with 800 plus companies on our hiring platform. And last year we had a 95% placement rate of our students. So we're really, really pleased with those numbers. And it's been some amazing growth over the last 3 years, which led us to starting up in the UK at the end of 2020. And so exactly like you said, the aim is to get coding newbies to turn into software developers with a 6-month course plus 6 months of career coaching.
Great. Okay, well, we'll come back to that and I'll ask you a little bit more about what the company does a little bit later. But what I wanted to start with, obviously, there's a lot of people listening into the podcast who may be in a position where they're interested in coming into the industry. So why should anybody choose to be a software engineer, particularly now?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think there's the role itself, which is, I think, the most appealing thing about it. A lot of the people that we speak to, they don't feel challenged in their day-to-day. They don't feel like they're getting any sort of like mental stimulation in their jobs. And this is something where I think coding really comes into its own. Coding is just problem solving, really, and solving increasingly complex problems. And the onus is on you, really, to work out the answers for yourself. And so you're constantly challenging yourself. You're constantly learning new things. And I think this is definitely the most attractive part of it for anyone that wants to break into the industry. And aside from that, just to add, the role itself is there's a lot of flexibility. There's obviously great salaries. There's great career prospects, and there's some really exciting companies working on some really interesting projects that is really attractive for people breaking into software engineering.
Okay. I mean, are you able to give us any examples of some of the things that your students have done in terms of what they learn, maybe, and also what it leads to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and maybe interesting to talk about backgrounds as well. So, I think a couple of examples of students on our cohort at the moment. We actually have someone who's recently just turned 18, and actually only came to the UK within the last 18 months. So their idea was they want to get into software engineering. They saw university as kind of not the most obvious route to get there. And they came across Boolean and they saw us as a much more kind of fast-tracked version to getting a job as a software developer, which is exactly what we say that we do. And on the flip side, that person is in the same class as someone who's in their 50s, who worked as a kind of network engineer for the last 20 plus years at some of the biggest tech companies that you can think of. And because of COVID, was made redundant and started looking at opportunities to reskill. So you get all different backgrounds, all different people coming along that want to break into tech. In terms of what they can do during the course, we teach them some really modern technologies. So, your JavaScript, we teach them React, TypeScript, and Node. And they go on after the course, typically into software developer roles. But there is actually no limit on what they can do. They can break into most roles within tech. So we have had people go into testing roles, for example. We've had people go into more of like a sales engineer kind of role, and we've had people go into even project managers as well, if they kind of want to leave behind the coding day to day.
Yeah, and obviously you touched there on people coming from different backgrounds and different walks of life and transitioning into the tech industry. So you also mentioned a number of different sort of technologies and development stacks and so forth. So it can be a little bit intimidating perhaps when somebody thinks about coming in to the industry and how much there is to learn. So how do you go about sort of breaking down that sort of approach to enable it to be teachable?
Yeah, it's a minefield. There are so many things that you can start with. I think that's kind of the hardest point. I think for both the kind of boot camps or the universities or the teaching institution is kind of what's the best language to teach a newbie, and then also for the student themselves. Where do I start? There's so much material out here. I think there's a number of things that you can do. I think I'm a big fan of networking, connecting with people in the industry. Get on LinkedIn, get on Eventbrite or Meetup.com. Go along to some events, meet with some people who work as software developers, but not just software developers, anyone that works in tech really, and just start to find out a bit about what do they do, what's their day to day, what kind of problems do they work on, what kind of skills do they think that you need to do that role. There's some great YouTube videos that are like a day in the life of a developer. There's some great blogs on Medium as well. So there's a lot of great places to go to kind of build up a picture of what you could actually be doing if you made it a reality. And then from there, if that is the decision is that you then want to become a software developer, the second question to ask yourself is, well, how do I want to do it? And this is where you get into, do I want to go to university? Do I want to try a boot camp? Do I want to do a self-paced, online course with Udemy or something like that? And that's kind of where you've got to answer the question of how do I learn best and what's my learning style?
Right. Okay. So it sort of leads on to my next question, really, about the types of roles that people can do subsequently. So if somebody who's new and looking at existing job adverts, for example, to get an understanding of what people are asking for or looking for, you see adverts for .NET developers, for example, and you may see one that says front-end developer required or back-end developer required or full-stack developer required. There are so many different descriptions and terms and so forth. Do you cover that in your course, and do you focus on one particular area?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because front end developer at one company will largely do the same as a front end developer at another company, but everything will have its own nuances, and the distinction between front end and back end. Sometimes depending on the company size, a front end developer at one company might do stuff that a back end developer does at another company, just because they don't have enough resources, or they like to have their front end developer more involved in more of the stack. So it's a tricky one for sure. At Boolean specifically, we are a full stack development course. So you will learn the front end with HTML and CSS and JavaScript, and you'll also learn the back end. So we use JavaScript for the back end as well. So we use Node, and you'll also do some databases with Postgres, which is a SQL database. And you'll also touch on APIs and that kind of stuff. But really, the point where we try and support our students the most with careers, it comes towards the end of the course and when they're actually job hunting. And that's where we try and have some sessions with them to work out, okay, so what do these terms mean? What does it actually mean day to day? What would you actually be doing day to day? And I think this is a really important question that we get our students to ask themselves is, look at this job description, look at this company, maybe look at some of the developers and the staff that work there, and ask yourself the question, how does tech help this company to achieve their goals? And once you've answered that question, then the second question to answer yourself is, as a developer at this company, what would my role be in helping the company to achieve its goals? And I think that's a nice way to position it, to kind of get an understanding of what's the overall mission here and how do you play a part?
Yeah, that's a very good way of describing it. So if somebody was considering, maybe coming into the industry as a software engineer or a software developer, what would your sort of immediate advice be? Where should somebody get, or how should they get started?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would say, as I said before, best thing to do is just to start to build a mental map of the industry, and the quickest way to do that is to hear from people who are in the industry. So if YouTube's your thing, get on some of the vlogs, the video blogs, and follow some influencers, follow some people in the tech industry. There's also a ton on Instagram as well if you search for some of the hashtags like coding life, developer life, that kind of thing. Or indeed attend some events. And there's a really fantastic organization called CodeBar, which is aimed at people who are kind of at the start of their journey, and it pairs you up with people who are working in the industry to kind of work on problems together. And you can take a project along and they'll help you along with it, and you can also kind of meet with other people that are learning to code for the first time. So there's tons of great places to go to kind of see if you get the bug, because that's the first thing. Do you have the bug? And once you got the bug, then it's, how do I make this a reality? And really your options are sort of, you've got three main options. Head to uni. Uni's great, I think, especially if you've never been before, and you want to go through all the kind of all those lifestyle changes that happen when you go to uni, make loads of friends, and live on your own for the first time, financial independence, that kind of thing. But it's long and it's expensive. You can learn by yourself. There's a ton of great websites: Udemy, Coursera, Treehouse. They all do sort of like self-paced online courses, which are really good, especially if you want to fit it around family or work commitments or that kind of thing. The only challenge with them is you lose that accountability and that kind of mentorship that comes with a full-time course. Or your third option is those full-time courses. So Boolean, we're one option. There's a ton of other boot camps. General Assembly, Flatiron are some of the bigger ones that people have heard of. And those are typically three months. We're 6 months, but they're often 3 or 4 months. And you'll go in every day. You'll code every day. You'll have teachers there to mentor you and support you. And that kind of suits people, I think, that want to fast track, let's say, into the industry.
Okay. Now you touched on one point at the beginning there where you said you don't know whether necessarily you're going to have to get the bug, if you like, for it and really engage. So if somebody is sort of uncertain and maybe wants to try it out, do you have any recommendations for how they should do that?
Yeah, definitely. There's a load of free websites as well. So there's Code Academy and Free Code Camp are two of the really well-known ones. And there's also a website called Code Wars where you can do like, they call them katas, as in like short exercises, which you can choose any language that you're familiar with to learn them in. So maybe it's Python, maybe it's JavaScript, maybe it's Ruby. You can have a go and see if it interests you. And if you want to work on something, if you maybe done a little bit, maybe you did a maths degree or an engineering degree, you did a little bit at university, and maybe you want to actually build like a little project, maybe a little calculator or something, then something like CodeBar. Take your project along, pair up with somebody, get some feedback, work together on that project. That's a really good way to start to see, can I imagine doing this every day, all day, every day? And does that excite me?
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. And in terms of the industry and the opportunities that are out there, which we started to talk about at the beginning. So in terms of the opportunity within the UK, what are you seeing from your sort of engagement with your sort of end clients, if you like?
Yeah. I think from our engagement with hiring partners, but even at a more macro level, the tech industry is really booming at the moment. I think it's been very resilient through kind of the COVID pandemic. There's a really interesting report that Tech Nation ran at the start of this year, which talked about the UK is the third country in the world for tech VC investment behind the US and China. And interestingly, we actually just passed, I think this week or last week, the 100 tech unicorns milestone. So that's 100 companies in the UK valued at over $1 billion, which is crazy, and all this kind of points to an industry that is thriving, an industry that's getting a lot of investment, an industry that I think post-Brexit, the government is really trying to put a lot of emphasis on. The one sort of challenge with it, and interestingly in this Tech Nation report, is that London is the fourth city after San Francisco, Beijing, and New York for tech investment, tech VC investment. And this is the kind of catch-22 of the UK. We're getting a ton of investment, but it's really staying in the south. It's staying in London. And the Prime Minister keeps talking about leveling up, and I think tech is definitely a way that we could genuinely level up. And I think that's the bonus of a place like Boolean, where you have online learning, and this is a one really positive thing about online learning out of the pandemic and the move online, is that you suddenly kind of democratize a little bit between the sort of rural and urban locations, and the cities outside of London can start to thrive a little bit more because they have access to education, they have access to work, which they didn't in before the pandemic in the same way. So yeah, some really positive signs from the industry as a whole. And yeah, if you look at some of the kind of well-known tech companies in the UK at the moment, they're hiring like crazy. There's a ton of roles open. So it's really exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really interesting to hear. I don't want to get into a political discussion
No,
too much
no.
about North and South, because that could blow into something too much. But you're right in terms of the fact that obviously our working culture has very much changed over the last 18 months or so as a result of the pandemic. But I do wonder if if we're going to see that sort of encouragement for investment in different cities and sort of to attract technology companies, because I don't necessarily see that yet.
Yeah, I think I'm doing this report a disservice, because there is sections of it that focus on the other cities in the UK that are really coming up, and there are some real tech hubs. So Oxford and Cambridge you would expect, but also Bristol, Manchester, Edinburgh, even Brighton's got a pretty thriving tech scene, Leeds as well, Birmingham. And Liverpool to a small extent as well. So there are definitely hubs in the UK, and interestingly, they do seem to be quite tailored. So there might be, I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I think there's one that's really good for cyber, for example. There's one that's really good for AI. And so you are kind of seeing these little pockets pop up around the UK, which is really promising.
Yes, it is, definitely. Okay, so we talked very much about starting and getting trained and getting the knowledge, but obviously the big step really comes at the end of your course, for example, where somebody actually has to find a job as a result of the training that they've done. So what are the challenges, and how do you help people achieve that?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is probably confidence in a way, because there's this thing called imposter syndrome that I think exists in all industries, but it seems very prominent in the tech industry, especially for junior developers. Yeah, so I think definitely finding that confidence is a really important thing, and that comes with practicing. I think that comes with getting good feedback as well from instructors, and so this is something we've built throughout the courses. Every day you'll do an exercise and get feedback on it the next day, and this is a really important part, the feedback loop, where this is where you're doing really well, and this is where you can do a little bit better. And then in terms of actually finding a job, I think there's two big challenges. I think one is the fact that a lot of people come into this industry with kind of no knowledge of, as we were talking about before, what these terms mean, what roles are out there, what companies are out there even. Apart from Facebook, Apple, and Google are the ones that everyone knows about. And I think the second challenge is sort of like how to navigate that kind of network, which in tech it's such a big part of tech. The tech community is so powerful, so strong, not just for finding a job, but also for your personal growth, your personal development, ongoing as you kind of develop your career. So that's a lot of work that we do is around kind of helping people understand how to navigate the tech landscape, both in terms of what these terms mean and kind of where to go to kind of meet people that are in positions of hiring.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about Boolean as well, and how are you different to other companies out there that provide online training?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of great companies doing a lot of great stuff. I think at Boolean specifically, we kind of pride ourselves on a couple of points that we think are that help us kind of stand above the rest. I think the first one is our one-to-one support is definitely a huge thing that we offer. So the fact that during those afternoons when you're working on exercises, there are instructors available online, kind of on call, if you like, and you just kind of drop them a message and they'll jump on a video call with you and help you out when you get stuck. I think that's a really huge thing. It's really important not to just solve everyone's problems for them. The whole point is you need to struggle a little bit. But once you've struggled a little bit, it's very easy to kind of quickly fall into kind of despair and detachment and kind of, disappointment and annoyance with coding. So we need to catch people before they get there and kind of push them back on their way so that they can keep struggling, and learning, but not kind of giving up. So that's a really big thing.
Absolutely. I think, yes, you're right. Very much. It can be very challenging if you feel like you're on your own. You're not part of that sort of class, physically actually in a room together where you can actually talk to people directly. It can be a little bit challenging when you're doing it remotely. So that must be a significant part of what you have to do to enable people to successfully get through the course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's this sort of idea that online learning is just, doing your classes on Zoom. And it's absolutely not just that. You need infrastructure and processes in place that allow you to, one, kind of track learner progress and make sure that you're catching people that are struggling. And two is like build a sense of community. And this is a really important part of what we do. And we have custom built software that we use to track students. That lets us know, how everyone's doing at an individual and a cohort level. And we use Discord actually as our kind of communication tool, along with Zoom as our kind of lecture tool. But Discord, the really powerful feature is kind of the voice channels. So we encourage pair programming. We see students pairing every day, all day, and they're jumping in voice channels with each other. They're mixing and meeting up with different people in their cohort. And the feedback that we've had is it feels like you're in the same room as them, and that's really nice to hear. That's exactly what we're aiming for.
Okay. And in terms of where your students are located as well, obviously we've touched on the fact that you sort of started out in Italy. You've now moved to the UK. What is next? Where are you targeting as your next sort of market, if you like?
Yeah. So as things stand, we're looking to push the UK and Ireland and kind of really grow here. We've run our first 2 cohorts, and we're looking to kind of build and expand on that. I think in the future, we have different options. One option is to kind of make UK the international hub, and sort of do an English language course that's open internationally. But I think one strength of Boolean has definitely been the kind of localization feature. So all of our teachers in Italy are Italian, they speak in Italian. So I think that's really attractive for people. And I think there's definitely some hubs around Europe that would be interesting to explore. Germany, the Nordic countries, the Netherlands and Spain are definitely interesting options. And further overseas, I think Australia is a really growing market that could be really exciting, as well as sort of some of the kind of like Southeast Asian islands. Singapore, for example, could be a really interesting option as well. The US, tough one to crack, I think. Maybe when we're a lot bigger.
Yes, that's possibly true. And in terms of what you offer as well, so very much at the moment is focusing on software engineering. Are you looking at doing other things as well, or is that going to be your core offering?
As things stand, definitely software engineering is our core offering, and the most likely expansion is kind of up and down the experience. So, for people who want to go a little bit further than beginner, maybe like an advanced software engineering course, and maybe even kind of a little bit backwards as well. Those sort of like entry-level digital skills, which the government here is really pushing. I'm a big fan of us becoming sort of like, the one-stop shop for tech. So the idea that we could do cyber, data engineering, AI, that kind of stuff as well, I think could be really attractive for people who don't just want to get into coding.
Yeah, absolutely right. So if someone's interested, where can they find out more about Boolean and make contact with you?
Yeah, they can head to our website, which is boolean.co.uk. And the really nice thing is we made our first week completely free. So if you want to try it out before getting in touch with us, just hit on the button that says free week, and you can work through the lectures by yourself and the exercises by yourself. And if you like what you see, you can apply to our course by hitting the Apply Now button, and that'll take you through to a call with our admissions team who can walk you through what it means to join Boolean and whether it's the right place for you.
Patrick, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been great chatting with you.
Thanks for having me, Phil. I had a great time.
Thanks for listening to the IT Career Energizer podcast. To find out more about building a successful career in IT, visit itcareerenergizer.com.